Political analyst Professor Andre Duvenhage from the Northwest University is joining us now via Zoom to share his views on how the conference unfolded. Prof, always good to talk to you. Thanks so much indeed for joining us.
Good evening, Peter. Nice talking to you.
What are your first reflections on this now concluded Northwest Provincial Conference?
Peter, my first impression, I am glad that the conference took place and that it ended the way it did end. We have seen the election now of all the members of the PEC, all 35 of them, and my understanding is that by far the majority, people mentioned the number of 31 is loyal towards the newly elected chairperson, Mr. Nonu Moloi. If that is the case, we can expect stability in the province, and this is very much needed at this point. We have seen major challenges in the province unfolding over the past years. Since 2018, there was the interim provincial committee. Now we have an elected committee, and I'm expecting some changes when it comes to provincial government.
It certainly has been quite a journey and has led to court cases. Does this mean that now that you've lost in court, that's the end of the story? Or do we have disgruntled members that are perhaps unable to speak now that the courts have spoken?
Peter, the information I receive is that there are still disgruntled people and that they will try to get direct access towards the Constitutional Court. But I believe, generally speaking, they are going to be unsuccessful. I'm expecting the conference to prepare now for the national conference towards the end of the year, and it will be very interesting to see how the Nonu Moloi group is going to position themselves. We have seen a very close relationship between Mr. Nonu Moloi and Mr. Paul Mashatile, but the interesting dynamic is the connection between Mashatile and Ramaphosa, or Mashatile and the others. And I think we will see more of this in future, but I am expecting a more stable ANC in the province. We have seen Nonu Moloi in his address mentioning a number of things, some of the challenges with regard to membership, cleaning up the branches. He also touched on cadre deployment, supporting the principle, but criticizing the application. And he also mentioned the importance of changing in local government structures and the whole dispensation with regard to local government. No mention was made of coalition politics, although they need to prepare themselves with regard to the 2024 election. Interesting was the absence of the president of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa. My understanding is that he is at the moment in Angola or somewhere else.
All right, so how does this bode for the national office with their unity project across the country? We've been watching the various provincial elective conferences taking place and trying to figure out what those equations mean for the elective conference at the end of the year. What does this one mean? Another thumbs up for President Cyril Ramaphosa?
Peter, I am not 100% sure. I think my take at the moment on the situation is that Mr. Ramaphosa is the strongest candidate when it comes to the position of the president and leader of the ANC. But there's a strong competition for the position of deputy. And one scenario is a scenario where Paul Mashatile may become the deputy president, at least on the Ramaphosa slate. The other argument I'm also picking up is that Paul Mashatile can reposition himself, and he may even challenge the position of Ramaphosa and getting his own group to stand for position nationally. And I think at the moment, both scenarios are possibilities. It will all depend when the process is opening up during September, and we have seen the contests. What we have seen, however, in the province is that Supramwamupelu, who is clearly linked to the RET faction, is aligning with Nonu Moloi, and this brings up the possibility of the RET group closer to Nonu Moloi and the RET group in a way repositioning themselves with regard to individuals and candidates. But I think the interesting figure to watch here is the guy who talked at the end of the conference, and that is the leader, Paul Mashatile. And I think he can play a very important role in terms of the leadership contest in the near future.
What about the voters in general who might have been watching all of this unfold? Does it inspire them for the elections in 2024? Because that's really what all matters. We see that reports of gangsters being involved in tenders and all kinds of corruption taking place. And this perhaps has dismayed voters over time. This new leadership, can they address this sufficiently to convince voters that there is hope?
Peter, I think you have just mentioned probably the biggest challenge of this new leadership. At the moment, some of the surveys are indicating the lowest possible support for the ANC, some of them indicating a support even below 40%. I think the Ipsos Markinor survey just above 40, something like 42%. So at the moment, if there's an election taking place, the ANC is not going to achieve an absolute majority, that is 50% plus one, and they must enter forms of coalition politics. And Nonu Moloi mentioned this, that they need to work very hard towards the 2024 election. I think the ANC is going to aim and achieve an absolute majority. My own take on it, it is highly unlikely. We have seen a consistent tendency of higher and higher levels of political apathy. And I am looking at a reconfiguration of the political spectrum. I think the ANC in future will still play an important role, but if they are not going to change themselves in a drastic way, I believe they can lose the 2024 elections and not achieving a 50% plus one total. We have seen that in the local elections last year, where they achieved only 47% of the support on a national level. And this can change the whole picture of South African politics.
Professor Duvenhage, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very, very much indeed. Always good to get your insights and your thoughts. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Peter.
All right, that's Professor Duvenhage speaking to us about the Northwest Conference, the ANC, that reconstituted to finish the work that they'd started a few weeks ago. And it's all done and dusted now. The new leadership is in place, and all is left for the new leadership is to get cracking in convincing voters to have faith in them.